to the Empowered Intuitive Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tayla, and with me is beautiful Petra Costa. And today we are chatting about planets in the microwave, navigating the retrogrades. So, what is a planetary retrograde, one may ask? Well, in New Age terms, planetary retrogrades have become quite the phenomenon that we keep track of. And notably, Mercury retrograde has copped a bad rap when it comes to flipping itself on its axis. So, a retrograde, pretty much in metaphysical terms, is when a planet is seemingly moving in the reverse of its orbit or spinning on its axis. And through this illusion of reversing its spin, it therefore flips or reverses the traits or energies that are associated with those planets. So let's go back to Mercury as an example, because, you know, we're all hating on him at the moment. Mercury is the planet of communication, progression, technology. So during a Mercury retrograde, where the planetary energies normally promote good communication, teamwork, direction, statistical, navigational skills, etc., anything that has a logistical sort of frame of mind, that gets turned on its head. So during a Mercury retrograde, we have communication breakdowns. We have mishaps in financial investments. We have breakdowns in technology and communications devices. I have lost a laptop during Mercury retrograde. I'm still salty about it. So that's pretty much in the New Age perspective on what a retrograde is. But the funny thing is that it is actually an optical illusion. It's a trick of the eye. So the planet isn't spinning backwards, but it looks like from Earth that it's spinning backwards. And Petra, you've done a lot of research around what is actually happening with the planet in regards to this. So do you want to touch on that a little bit for everyone?
I do, because I got completely confused about this. I don't know much about planets and retrograde, so I'm really just going to be a bystander a little bit on this one.
Yeah.
But I assumed that it meant when it was talking about this axial spin, like it's spinning on its axis, but it is actually about when the planet moves around the sun. So it's its orbital spin in relation to how we're viewing it from Earth. And for a certain period of time, it appears like it has decided to come back in its orbit and spin the other way. So it's not the axis spin, it's the spin in its orbit.
Yeah.
And I tried to find out how you can liken that, like what's an optical illusion that we would experience here. And the most common response was, it's similar to when you add a set of lights and you've stopped at a set of lights and the car beside you moves.
Yeah.
And then for a second, you feel like you're going backwards. Like you've got that feeling of going backwards.
That's so funny.
That is the optical illusion that's occurring when you are watching these planets. And it was really funny because I went onto a NASA a video on the NASA website where it explained to me exactly what was going on with a 1 meter ruler and an orange and an apple, I think it was. And no matter how many times they slow-moed it and did it, I could not see what they were talking about. So I'm like,
Where is
dudes,
it? I want to see it.
dudes, show me this bloody thing going backwards. But I got off on a tangent because I had assumed it was the spin on its axis,
Yeah.
which was what, and I thought, wow, that, like, are we really looking at that close up that we can see them spinning and then turning in the other way? But no, it is actually the spin in terms of its orbit appears to then just be. And for all of those people on Spotify, I'm doing all of this with my hands, so you can tell
She's
exactly what.
imitating the orbits with her fingers. Like, this is how the planets move, and like cowgirl.
So, oh, sorry about that. But yeah, so I will go back into the spin on the axis more because I learned some stuff that blew my mind, but might not be relevant to what we're talking about right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the optical illusion has played into how astronomers and astrologers have interpreted the planetary influences on our lives when they're moving through this retrograde. And so we actually have several planets in retrograde at the moment. And so I'm just going to list a few. But Mercury, we've just come out of a retrograde there. So if you experienced any sort of communication breakdowns, technical difficulties, and such, that's probably, you can attribute that to Mercury. You can also attribute that to human error, but if you need someone to blame, the planet is there. So we're actually in this like post shadow phase of the retrograde, the retro shade. And pretty much it's like a cool down period. So for the gamers out there, you know, when you use a little skill and you've got like that 5-second cooldown before you can use it again, that's kind of what a retro shade is. So a retro shade is like waiting for the energies to realign to what they normally would be if the planet was direct. So moving from that touch and go communication, technical glitches, whatever of the Mercury retrograde back into, okay, we can now have a cohesive conversation again. My laptop's not freezing every 5 seconds. The car's not breaking down every 5 seconds. Hallelujah. So we're still currently in a retrograde or a shadow phase of Mercury, and that will end on September the 30th. So by the time this episode is out, I'm assuming that will be over. But the planets that we are in retrograde in at the moment, so we have Pluto, and Pluto is moving through Aquarius to Capricorn because the in orbit, just like the sun and the moon, if your astrology savvy people are listening, the planets also move through the stars, the star signs. So that plays into like natal charts and things, but we won't get too technical there. So Pluto is moving through Aquarius to Capricorn from, it started in May 1st and it will end in October 11th. Neptune is moving through a retrograde in Pisces, which will end December the 6th. Saturn is moving through a retrograde in Pisces as well. So November the 4th, that will end. And then Venus is just finished a retrograde through Leo. And I believe we're also out of the retro shade with that one. So that was a bit of a spicy retrograde for everyone. It really challenged the passion and the fire in our relationships and where we feel those sparks. We have Chiron, which is not a planet, but it is an asteroid. And back in antiquity, it was considered a planetary body. So we still incorporate that in our natal charts when we're doing birth charts for everyone. And it is moving through a retrograde through till December 6th. We have the Mercury one, which is just finished, and it moved through Capricorn. And Uranus is moving through Taurus until January the 27th next year. Yeah. And then Jupiter is also moving through Taurus.
Yeah.
Until December the 31st. And planets themselves don't continuously go in retrograde. They have periods of when they're moving through retrograde and then when they're normal again, when they're going through direct. So Mercury does it 4 times a year. Petra, you had the consistencies of when they moved through retrograde, did you not?
I did. I've got a table in front of me because I got really cranky because none of the websites gave me the data in a table. But I have a table. Mercury goes in every 3 to 4 months for about 3 weeks. Venus every 18 months for about 6 weeks. Mars every 2 years for about 11 weeks. Jupiter goes every year. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all go every year, varying from about 17 weeks to about 26.5 weeks. So it just goes to show that I hear a lot about this retrograde, and I'm a little bit of an eye roller when it comes to this kind of stuff. I've got to be honest. Like I have a tendency of like, oh, here we go again. And it feels to me that it's just a way of just for light and shade. Like in anything we do, whether it be tarot cards or oracle cards or whatever, we want to have a version of light and shade, and this is our way to establish that.
I would agree with that. There is a very much a yin yang element of planets moving through retrogrades and things. And you know, when interpreting like what the energies are doing through those times, I think it's too easy to just flip it on its head and be like, yeah, this is the malevolent opposition of what the normal energy is. So, but I think when you're looking at the true meaning of light and shade and the yin and yang, you really have to look at a retrograde as just the shadow aspects that are relatively unseen, like the underside or the dark side of the planet's shadow, pretty much, because that's what retrograde is about.
Yeah.
About its shadow. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a bad thing, because retrogrades in terms of spirituality really call on us to be reflective. They call on us to be introspective. We live in this society where everything is so go, go, go all the time. And when we are stopping, or when we're forced to stop, we're really hit with these confounding truths that we just don't know how to integrate. And so I think the beauty of having a retrograde in your calendar, or knowing when it's going about, is, even if it's just making time for yourself to really look at those areas that that planet is influencing in your life, and discerning what needs change, what needs to be released, what needs to be let go of, what needs to improve. Venus moved through a retrograde recently, and a lot of people realized that there are certain aspects of their relationships they're not happy with, or they're not happy with the quality of the relationships they have in their life, or there's certain people that they might be pleasing for the sake of saving face. And that also is a Leo attribute, because Leos are very much about expression. They're very much about showing themselves, but also crowd pleasing, trying to fit in, trying to be the cool kid. And so Venus moving through that shadow aspect of Leo as well in its retrograde really highlights those traits, and makes you think, where are you show stopping for people? Where are you canceling yourself out for the sake of others? So I think, even if it's just from a personal development perspective instead of a woo-woo perspective, because the planets, I joked before, but the planets aren't actually causing these things to happen, but there are external energies that may nudge things in a particular way. It's like a seesaw, it's just like a balancing scale. So that's my personal interpretation of retrogrades. And I'm just looking over, because I'm like, what other notes do I have on this? But
I want to jump in, because I think it's interesting when you talk about, well, I mentioned it, and we talk about shadow, and there's light and there's shade, there's yin and there's yang.
Yeah.
And I don't know why everyone's made that synonymous as a good and a bad.
Yeah.
And so if I do shadow work, or if there's a shadow, it's, these are the negatives of all these things. And it's like, oh, come on, guys, we're a bit more evolved than that, aren't we?
It's
Like,
not negatives.
do we really have to look at things in such a simplistic view? So, like, if you're talking about things, Mercury, we'll go Mercury because you're here all of the time, doing it all of the time. And we're talking about communication, about how you think and how you, well, surely it just gives you an opportunity to stop and think about how you're communicating. So actually stop, and rather than do it so fluidly and let it just be all about the natural way of doing it. So there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, hang on, maybe I'm communicating, I'm coming on too strong, I'm doing this, maybe I'm not. To be reflective of that, and to actually acknowledge where you might be coming across wrong. It's not a negative, and it just irks me a little bit that this and it's in spiritual circles as well, where it should not be, that this side of negativity and shadow work and etc. it's bad. And I just like, no, to stop, to actually have a think about something. Like, we'll go Venus, expression, commitment, love, all of those kind of things, goes into retrograde, and everyone's like, oh, I've just found my relationship is not working here, and then this, that, and I might but not this. Well, how about it's actually saying, why don't you look where you're not doing it right, where you're not working hard enough? Why don't, maybe it's there because you're so happy just to go with the flow that you're not bothering to see that it might be you that's causing some of the hiccups. So live to gain. And I just, that's not a bad thing. At
I
any
love
point,
how much calling out you're doing right now.
oh, I'm sorry. It just annoys me. I know the sorry. I've gone on a rant, but it just seems to me where it just gets so easy to blame it on this and that. And we just, whatever it is, whether you're doing tarot, oracle, or it's astrology, and we've got all of the energies out there, 100%. But the one that's going to be impacting you the most at any point in time is yourself. Like, you're the one that's going to be impacting your world the most. Like, we are all our own sun. We are the center of our own universe. So, people, that's all I'm saying. Back to you, Tay.
I agree though. I agree. There's an invitation to go deeper, to do deeper work based on these planetary archetypes and things. And even in all different spiritual beliefs and stuff, the whole point is to develop. And if you're just sort of using it as a cop out, like, it's one thing to joke about it, but then it's another thing to literally go, well, the planet did this to me, so my life's out of my control. That's not the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm feeling the rant. I'm here for it, girl. But on topic of retrogrades, so
What do we do, Tay? What do we do when it goes in retrograde?
So pretty much the consensus of what we do in a retrograde is nothing. You use it as a time to reflect. You don't make drastic decisions. If you do need to act, or you find yourself in situations and places where you need to make snap decisions, try and make them as mindfully as possible. Try and consider that if it's a communication thing, be sure your message is very clear and concise. Be sure it's getting across what you really want to say, instead of trying to sugarcoat it too much or be too blunt about it. I'm not saying people please, and I'm not saying be an asshole. I'm just saying be very conscious in what comes out of your mouth.
Oh dear.
Even though I just said that in a retrospective, they're like, yeah, this woman. But
I should have thought about that one earlier.
Yeah. So, just having a very mindful process of what's happening in and around you and in your life. And, a lot of people say, don't start new things, or don't take on big investments and stuff. And I think really it's an invitation for common sense.
Yep.
Really, probably it's the best time to let your rational mind take the wheel a little bit, instead of following that impulse, following those quick fix gratifications and urges, especially when it comes into the areas governed by the planets. And I suppose we haven't really talked into the different traits of the planets, because we probably should, so that everyone who's listening and watching can sort of translate or figure out what a retrograde might mean for them. So do you want to go through the little planetaries?
I'm going to go through it with the like planets for dummies version of it that I've just put together. When I was looking into astrology, when I was creating my oracle deck, because I wanted to have a zodiac, etc., reference to a lot of the things that I was doing, so there was another way to look into the cards. I thought I needed to learn a little bit about it, and I had a really great resource, and they gave me all of the planets and they gave them a motto. So the planets or astral bodies all had a motto, and they make it a little bit easier for me to understand them. So for instance, we've got the sun as an I am. Its motto is I am, because it's about ego and about self. Moon is I feel, because it's about your emotions and how you feel about things. Mercury, as we've said, I think, about communications. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that these all have, and so you can jump in if you need to, but Mercury's I think. Venus, I love, because it relates around expression and commitment, and obviously love, and it can be passionate love, but all different kinds of love. Mars, I action, but it can also be aggression, like it's named after Mars, for goodness sake. So it's going to have that kind of warlike, aggressive kind of tendencies, but it is I act, so motion. Jupiter, I grow, so about movement, and that's why it's linked with higher learning and stuff like that. Saturn, I achieve, so organization comes into Saturn. Uranus, I evolve, so revelations comes through. Neptune, I dream, I love that. With insights. Pluto, I empower, and I'm power for transformation. And did you say that it was Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto? I think you mentioned were the three that were either going to come up in retrograde or are in and around that. And that was interesting to me because the three words I've got here is revelation, insight, and transformation. And that's really interesting to me that those three who are so intrinsically linked would be going into retrograde at the same time.
Yeah, so we've got a Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune
Yeah.
in retrograde this year.
Yeah, that's really, really
And
interesting.
I
So,
find that's really relevant because a lot of like in my own life at the moment and personal experiences, there's a lot of revolution happening. There's a lot of insights. There's a lot of intuitive development. And Jupiter is it's I grow, right? So, and
yeah,
Jupiter is an abundance planet. It's a prosperity planet, which I mean, we're probably not all feeling that prosperous at the moment because rising cost of living and whatnot. But when we're working with planetary magic, as you know from doing Walk of the Witch, Petra, which is the course that I teach, you call on Jupiter, the planetary archetypal energy, to work abundance magic, to work money magic. So, and there's a lot of themes going around that. And I suppose being in retrograde, having this rising cost of living, that's a really funny sort of coinky dink.
yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
I find this interesting for a number of reasons, and I don't know which tangent I'm going to go off of, but considering this is what I've got in front of me, I'm going to go with it. So, when I was looking into this in terms of the mottos around the planets, I was like, oh, cool, cool. That's good for me. People who probably failed that particular module of Taylor's course when it comes to the planets, I might have to go back and do it a little bit more. But it made me think of the chakras because the chakras have all of these similar mottos that go with them.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know them, I'll give them to you quickly. You've got the crown chakra, which is at the top of your head, is I understand. The third eye chakra, which is pretty much in between your eyebrows, just above, in between your eyebrows, is I see. The throat chakra, that is, and your throat, is I speak. Then you've got heart, which motto is I love. Solar plexus, I do. Sacral, I feel. And then we get down to the root, I am, which a lot of that energy is really similar to what with the planets, in my view. Like I can really see a link between a lot of them. But it was interesting when I Googled it to see if there was a link between chakras and planets, if that was a thing, or if I just sort of like all of a sudden stumbled on this new crazy concept. Because it's interesting to me as well that they both spin. Like I don't know if anyone knows about chakras, but there's
Yeah.
supposed to be wheels within us that work in a circular motion, and by opening and closing them, that we can channel energy force through us and all of
Just
that
blew
kind of
my
stuff.
brain, Petra. I
Huh?
You just blew my brain because
Yeah.
spin
I didn't
chakra spin. What the heck?
well, I know, right? Because I'm like, what? Oh my goodness, is it no one gone here before? Well, needless to say, many people have. Many, many people have made this connection before me. But what was interesting is I couldn't get anyone to agree on what goes with what, as to what planet goes with what chakra point. And I found that really, really interesting because each one of the websites and spoke with authority that would say that, yep, the root chakra is Mars, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But then I would also look at another one that was, no, the root chakra is Saturn, 100%. It's got to be. Another one came up with the root chakra as earth. Now, a lot of people don't use earth when we're talking about things like this. Oh,
Yeah.
no, my boo-boo. That was when it was talking about the elements.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but I really find it interesting because when I was looking at it, I'm thinking root to me is sun. Like the sun is about our ego, which is about ourself, and take us right down the bottom. But I suppose ego and base primal instincts, which is more root chakra, maybe that's not the best fit. But it was just really interesting that no matter all of them had authority, like this is what it is. So it's like, yep,
I think you
boom.
can attribute a few planets to each of the chakras. I mean, mum might say the moon could be third eye because it governs intuition and things, but you could also put Neptune there for I
Yes.
dream. We both sort of went through and decided, well, what would personally correspond for us? And I put the root as being Earth because I was like, I can't really think of any other planets. Like, this is my home. Root's all about where you belong, your origins. But you could also put Jupiter because it's a planet that's associated with abundance and prosperity. And for a lot of people, that means security. So being grounded. Sacral, I went Venus because I always think of the feminine mysteries and
Yeah.
the womb and the blood cycles and things like that. And that comes from my rose priestessing experiences.
Yeah.
And then sorry, I can't even.
No, go.
Then I have the heart, and I thought, well, the moon, I feel the heart. But you could also put Venus there.
It's funny.
But
So moon for
moon goes with
heart, like,
water too. So, and water's the element of emotion.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yep. And then Mercury, the throat for communication. I put the sun as solar plexus because the solar plexus is all about how you show up. It's your self-esteem. It's shining your light. And the sun shines with no apologies.
Yep.
And the moon, oh no, sorry, third eye I put moon or Neptune. And crown, I put Pluto.
Yep.
So, but you could also put Uranus in the crown as well a little bit because it's all about that revolutionary thought, that ascension, that growing out of the norm consciousness.
Yeah. See, I went Jupiter with the crown because I was going from an I grow higher learning thing. But I suppose crown is you've already grown, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
It's really like I just found it really, really interesting that although people speak with authority about things, it's just so varied on how it goes. I had a similar kind of, not going off on a side tangent, but I had a similar kind of like brain explosion when I was trying to work out the elements and how they were linked to north, south, east, west. And I did not realize that everybody does it differently. I just assumed that the way that I had known it was the way that it was, and everyone would agree with me until I started Googling it, and virtually no one agrees, and for wonderful reasons. And I think this is the thing where this kind of stuff has to be done intuitively a little bit. We've got, the planets. How did these emotions get attributed to the planets? Well, a lot of people actually analyzed what was going on historically as well. Because I was looking at this when we were talking about, this is more zodiac, but we'll go there, with the new 13th zodiac, when they talk about the 13th zodiac and what it would be, and I can't even pronounce it. So insert that later in the edit, Tay. Yeah, it's all for you funny. It's just some ridiculous long word. Huh? I really, if it came up and bit me on the bum right now, I wouldn't get it right. But it how people were attributing it to, because they looked at history and they said, okay, in history at this point in time where this was in this house or this house, or you know what I mean, it was having a certain impact, and that impact is how this has come about. So it's like with any of these things, I roll my eyes and go, oh, look, that's just great. You've decided that, Mercury is all about communication. You're just, I don't know what I'm talking like that for, but we'll go with it. who I don't know. But it's just like, who decided it? Well, it was decided because a lot of people analyzed it and nodded at each other and discussed it and talked about it and went, oh, yeah, you know what? I get that. I feel that. I understand that. And so it's not all just plucked at random. None of these things, people think they're plucked at random and they will shift and they will move, but they're hardly random. And like, even then when I'm looking at the little table in front of me, I'm going, Jesus, you got the ones that are every year that happen for 17 weeks, 20 weeks, and then whatever, Pluto transformation. Well, I reckon that's pretty great that we get that for 26.5 weeks of a year.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't want to, stagnation is the opposite of transformation. So I'm quite happy that I have times of growth and times where I don't, where I'm transforming, and sometimes where I can just consolidate on the transformation rather than constantly being in this state of go, go, go. So it sort of like makes a little bit of sense to me in a way, kooky kind of way.
We are cyclical beings. We live on a planet that has ever-turning seasons, and we have various life cycles going all around us at all times. And so I feel like it's more natural and within our, evolutionary being to continuously move through cycles ourselves. We talk about it as witches in a state of moving through with the seasons, but on a cosmic level, because we all come from this beautiful universe that was born from the darkness and depths of the cosmos out of nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
We're all moving through the same cycles, and it just blows me out about how this cylindrical action of orbiting is so related to our inner natures.
Well, this got me. This is one of the sidetracks that I went down. So I'm going to jump in with this now because, I asked myself that when I was looking at what retrograde meant, I got confused. I thought it meant the axis, the spin on the axis that we had. So I fell down a little bit of a rabbit hole about that, but I'll just, run it down a little bit. First of all, I was really super interested to realize that not all of the planets spun in the same direction on their axis. Now, okay, everyone out there is probably going, Petra, how did you not know that? That's just so ridiculous. Well, I didn't know it. But two planets go in a different direction, Venus and Uranus, who spin counterclockwise rather than clockwise, for want of a better definition of it. They all spin around in a counterclockwise orbit around the sun, and then they have their axis point of how the actual planet spins. So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. What how does it make sense that these planets the two of them are spinning in a different direction? Well, they believe that Uranus was actually knocked out of its orbit and was turned on its axis by a meteor, like an asteroid hitting it, like just a big old boom of an asteroid.
Wow.
Right? And you're like, okay, that's kind of freaking me out really badly. Right? So I'm thinking, but okay. Now, you mentioned it before, we've got Venus as being like a sister planet. Is that what you said to Earth?
Yeah, sister planet
Yes.
Earth.
Yeah. Now, it's got a lot of really similar things in terms, 224 days compared to Earth's 365. Cool. It's also got a core, a mantle, and a crust, which is exactly the same as same as Earth. And I was like, okay, now there's more than two, but there was two major theories as to how Venus started spinning the other way, because historically they think it did spin in the same way as the rest of us in a counterclockwise manner. Asteroid, mega asteroid boom, just knocked its socks off. Is one theory, but it's not the one that's the biggest theory. The biggest theory is the fact that this just blew my mind. So the core and the mantle, the spin that occurs with the core and the mantle creates friction between itself, which is creating an energy between those two things. And then you've got the crust that's doing just what it does. Venus has this ridiculously dense atmosphere, and it happens to be the atmosphere is so dense it actually has its own tidal system. So it's an atmospheric tidal pull that is occurring around Venus, which just happens to be acid rain, which is just so cool knowing that's the planet of love.
That's the planet of the feminine. That's the feminine right there. I'll love you like acid rain.
Like acid
that's
rain.
Why we have their showers hot. It's because we come from Venus.
And apparently this combination of the friction generated between the core and the mantle and the torque that's generated from the tidal shift in the atmosphere can generate enough torque to actually flip the planet's system, right? Really nice to know when you know Earth is a sister, right? So I'm not saying we're going to just all of a sudden be wiped out by the planet changing its system.
If we do shift our axis in the slightest, we're going to know about it because it's a major climate upheaval will happen. Like
That's it.
we're gonna get acid rain.
Gonna get acid rain. Like, oh,
Acid
honestly, we'd be praying for acid rain. We'll be saying thank you that I only got acid rain. What I found really interesting, because that means nothing about retrogrades, right?
No,
Nothing at all.
fascinating.
It's just an interesting little tidbit. But because the fact that Venus, there was also another theory that's gaining some force in the scientific community, is that it was a combination of the friction and torque generated by the, as I said, the core and the mantle and the atmospheric tidal pull, but as well with the sun's magnetism. So all of those combined were just like, poof, you're flipping on your axis.
Yeah.
Whatevs. I don't want to think about that, but I just found it really interesting because that's why Venus is referred to either as a 3-degree tilt
Yeah.
or a 177-degree tilt. So everyone knows that at some point it flipped.
Yeah.
So here was my question that I went into Google and asked and said, okay, dudes, we've got that covered. I'm with you. I'm frightened. It's horrific, but okay, I'm there.
Yeah.
Why are you spinning? Like, what created the spin, right? I was all the whole thing. Oh, yeah, motion and all this kind of stuff. Of course it spins. The planets inherited their spin from the dust that they were made out of.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like it needs a pause there because that's just insane to me. Because we know we're all stardust, right? We're all made of stardust anyway.
Yeah.
And then you add this extra amazing layer that these planets, these huge astral bodies, have actually retained the spin from what happened, just after the Big Bang.
Yeah.
And it's like we've got all of the laws of physics that tell us, and I had it on my screen and I've forgotten it, but effectively that if a body isn't acted on by another force, it will continue with the motion it's on.
Yeah.
So all of the planets will continue to spin, but that the initial thing that got them started was from the cloud of dust that they were formed from. So I hear people when they say, I'm not big into astrology, right? I'm not big into that. I'm like, oh, I'm a Taurus. I love being a Taurus because if anyone knows me, it's so my personality, and it's almost a meme in itself, right? I'm almost a meme. So I get that. But when you actually think about it and stop and think for a second to say, our planet, which is made out of the same stuff that we're made out of, is spinning because of what happened at the start of time as we know it.
Yeah.
And all we're suggesting is there might be some link between what's happening out there and what happens here. When you look at it that way, it sort of like becomes a little bit less crazy.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like we're all made up of the same stuff. So how could we not have this sort of lingering connection, and how could it not be influencing what's happening with us? I mean, it's all acting on their own separate gravitational pulls within their orbits and things, but our planet is doing the exact same thing as theirs. And our planet is, it's next to these other planets, no matter how many light years away or whatever. But and it's crazy to think that is still, all of that is happening all around us all the time, and we're just such tiny little ants on this little anthill in the vastness of the friggin' universe. Like, it's crazy. It's so crazy.
I just find it so, when you look into
how
things,
could it not influence us?
Yeah. Well, look, what would happen if we didn't have the moon? Like, I blow the moon up tomorrow. What happens? Well, a shit load of things happen.
Yeah.
Like bye-bye.
Yeah.
For one.
Yeah.
But you've got the tide, you've got all of these things, and it's proven. Like, this is proven in as much that we have evidence that suggests the moon impacts moods and that kind of thing. Talk to anybody who works in emergency services or in any that
shout out to the aged care workers.
Exactly. And they will say, oh yeah, it's full moon. And that's backed up by evidence, like statistics. Okay, I won't say evidence. It's backed up by statistics.
Yeah.
So what you do with the statistics is up to you, but it is backed up by statistics for reasons
which
that might still need to be explained.
which
It impacts people.
say it's more of a qualitative data
Yeah.
as to personal experiences and correlations when it comes to how the supposed movements of these planetary bodies are impacting us in our regular daily lives. Do you want to know something funny? So I learned how planets are made from the cartoon on Netflix Storybots. And they have this awesome episode where they're rapping about each of the planets and what they do. And my favorite one is Uranus. Do you want to hear it? I'm going to
I do.
rap for I'm Uranus. I fuck it up. I'm Uranus. I say that with pride. Okay, I lied. I'm embarrassed because I'm the only planet lying on its side.
But you know what?
But it's
you learned that.
I learned that from freaking Storybots.
Like when I said to you before, oh, Tay, which one is the one that's on its side? You were like, oh no,
it's Uranus because I know a rap.
I think it's like, I think it's easy to discount everything, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to do. And I make a practice of trying to do it whenever I can.
Yeah.
But I just thought the chakras and them spinning and the planets and the spinning, and then just thinking about that in terms of cosmically, that these planets are spinning because of they inherited the energy to spin. Like,
yeah,
I just need to pause on that. That to me is so mind blowing that it is beyond. And I know a lot of people are going to be going, why is Petra doing why does she care? What does that mean? And I go, to me, that's just so huge. I've got this thing, and I'm not going to go into it now, but my kids will know exactly what I'm talking about. And they'll actually say, Mom, don't go into the atoms again. Stop. Because I love the concept. I've got this thing about atomic entanglement. So I'm not going to go into it now because that's for another discussion. But atomic entanglement does my head in a way that I'm just like, no. I say, people, just stop, just think about that for a second, let it settle, because I can see by their expressions that they're just looking back at me and going, yeah, okay. And I'm like, no, yeah. This is one of those moments for me, because when I was like, oh my goodness, like this is something that happened. I don't know when the Big Bang was. We're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
And all these planets are on their merry old way, unless they've been hit by something or some other crazy energy has been generated. They've just continued on that way because of an inherited force.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But to keep things spicy for them, every now and then they trick you to think they're going backwards.
That
just things spicy for us.
Yes. And I must admit, I did think about this for myself just for 1 second. And I'm like, well, that should mean nothing, right? Whether there's an optical illusion or not, that should be nothing. But we're driven by visuals, right? So hugely and does it really make any difference? We see an eclipse, right? And we're all like, oh, it's an eclipse, but it's a visual thing. It's not an optical illusion. Of course it's not.
It's a trick of the light.
Yeah. And it's just like, so I don't know. I think if we're so ridiculously visual, if literally going back to the retrograde theory that we were talking about before, if it being equated to being similar to parked at a set of lights and the car next to you moves when you're not expecting it to, and you feel like you're going backwards, that can we've all had that happen. And we've all either grabbed the wheel of our car or put our brake down or our stomachs rolled.
Yeah.
Like we've all had that moment where now that's only an illusion, but we had all of those physical responses from said illusion. It's
so like seeing water on the road when you're driving.
Yeah.
There's no water on the road.
There's no water.
But because of how it looks in the, on the bitumen and the light and everything, that's what you're seeing. So of course it's going to have some sort of effect on you because it's a stimulus.
So I think that's interesting. So it may be an optical illusion. And it may not happen all of the time, like they all had their own periods. But
obviously at the Mercury Retrograde forum that we all missed to determine what Mercury means for everybody, it means something. It's got traits. They've got traits. they thought it was important enough to put it in the whole study of astrology.
Yep.
So crazy. And I think that brings us to the episode's end. So
yes.
Be sure to navigate these retrogrades well. Head out there and look up the planets and how they're wreaking havoc in your life, or how you can ally with them to improve your life. And as always, remember, curiosity may have killed a few cats, but there is no growth in blissful ignorance. Ask the planet.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Praise
Praise me.
I am the sun in my own universe.
So, yes, but what are we doing next week?
We're doing pop culture.
Pop culture witchcraft.
What's wrong with this picture?
What is wrong with the picture? That's going to be a really, really interesting one. So people make sure to, what do they do? Like, subscribe, follow.
Like and subscribe YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. And follow us on Spotify, because that will give you the updates for when new episodes are coming out weekly, each Wednesday, 11 a.m. And we will see you then.
Perfect.
Bye.
See ya.